Welcome to The Economic Historian. Right now, the world is drowning in debt. Governments owe trillions, companies owe trillions, even ordinary people owe trillions. In fact, global debt has crossed hundreds of trillions of dollars. But here's the question no one asks. If every country is in debt, who is the world actually paying? Who is the creditor? Because logically, if everyone owes money, there must be someone on the other side of that transaction, right? The United States owes over $30 trillion. Japan owes more than its entire economy. Many European nations are buried in borrowing. Developing countries are taking loans just to survive. So who are they all paying? Is there some hidden super rich country, a secret global bank, a group of elites controlling everything? Or is the answer far more surprising and far more unsettling? To understand this, we need to go back to the moment modern money changed forever. And because the system we live in today is not built on gold, not built on cash, but built on debt itself. In today's world, money is created when debt is created. Let that sink in. When governments need money, they don't just print it freely, they issue bonds, they borrow, they promise to pay later. And when banks create loans, new money enters the economy. Debt creates money. And money creates more debt. It's a loop, a system so large, so interconnected that almost no one sees the full picture. Here's where things get interesting, because when a government borrows money, it doesn't borrow from just one place. It borrows from banks, from investors, from pension funds, from other countries, and sometimes from its own citizens. Yes, the same people paying taxes may also be the ones funding the debt. So the line between debtor and creditor starts to blur. Countries owe money to institutions inside their own borders. Banks owe money to other banks. Governments owe money to funds that hold citizen savings. It's a global web, a financial system where everyone seems to owe everyone else, which leads us back to the original question. If the entire world is in debt, who is actually winning? Who sits at the top of this pyramid? And what happens if the system ever stops working? Because history has shown us something important. Empires don't just collapse from war. Sometimes they collapse from debt. In the next part, we're going to break open the global debt system. We'll see who really owns government debt, how central banks fit into the picture, and why the answer to this mystery is far more complex than most people think. And by the end, you might realize something shocking. The biggest creditor in the world might be closer than you think. To understand who the world owes money to, we need to understand what government debt actually is. When a country needs money, it doesn't walk into a bank and ask for a simple loan. Instead, it issues something called government bonds. A bond is basically a promise that says, lend us money today and we'll pay you back later with interest. These bonds are then sold across the global financial system. Banks buy them, investment funds buy them, pension funds buy them, insurance companies buy them, and sometimes other countries buy them too. For example, when the United States borrows money, some of that debt is held by foreign nations. Countries like Japan and China have historically held large amounts of U.S. government bonds. But here's what most people don't realize. A massive portion of government debt is owned domestically. That means a country often owes money to institutions inside its own borders. Your retirement fund, your savings account, your insurance policy. All of these may be indirectly invested in government bonds. So when governments pay interest on their debt, that money often flows back to their own financial system. It gets even more complex, because banks themselves operate on debt. When you deposit money into a bank, the bank doesn't just store it, it lends it out, it invests it, it buys bonds. And when central banks step in, things change even more. Central banks, like the Federal Reserve, can create money digitally, not by printing physical cash, but by expanding their balance sheets. They can buy government bonds, they can inject liquidity, they can stabilize markets during crises. This process is often called quantitative easing. During major economic downturns, central banks buy massive amounts of government debt to keep the system running. which leads to a strange reality. Governments borrow money from institutions that are supported by central banks that are backed by the government. It's a loop, a carefully balanced system built on trust. Trust that debts will be repaid. Trust that currencies will hold value. Trust that economies will keep growing, because as long as economies grow, debt becomes easier to manage. But if growth slows or confidence breaks, the entire system can feel the pressure. History has shown this pattern before. Empires that borrowed too much often face crises. From ancient Rome to modern financial crashes, debt has always played a role in shaping power. But today's system is different because for the first time in history, the global economy is deeply interconnected. If one major economy struggles, others feel the impact. If one country defaults, markets react worldwide. So again, we ask the question, if governments owe trillions, banks owe trillions, and people owe trillions, who is the ultimate creditor? Who sits at the top? The answer isn't a single country or a secret organization. The answer is far more surprising, because the people funding the system might actually be inside it. In the final part, we're going to uncover the biggest realization of all: who truly holds the world's debt, why the system keeps expanding, and what it means for the future of money, power, and global stability. Because once you see the full picture, you may never look at debt the same way again. So, if every country is in debt, who is the world actually paying? Here's the truth. There is no single master creditor, no hidden country sitting on top of the pyramid, no secret vault holding everyone's money. Instead, the global debt system is circular. Governments owe money to banks. Banks owe money to investors. Investors manage the savings of ordinary people. Pension funds hold retirement money. Central banks hold government bonds. And citizens fund governments through taxes and savings, which leads to a strange but powerful realization. The world owes money largely to itself. Your retirement fund may hold government bonds. Your bank may hold Treasury securities. Your taxes help pay interest. So in a way, you are both the debtor and the creditor. This doesn't mean debt is fake. It doesn't mean money is meaningless. It means the system runs on confidence that economies will keep growing, confidence that currencies will hold value, confidence that tomorrow will be bigger than today, because as long as the world keeps producing, building, and expanding, the system keeps moving. Debt gets rolled over. New bonds replace old ones. Growth keeps the machine alive. But if confidence ever breaks, that's when history shows us what can happen. Markets panic. Currencies fall. Empires weaken. Not always from war, not always from invasion. Sometimes from the weight of debt. Yet here's the twist most people miss. Debt isn't just a burden. It's also a tool. It builds roads, funds technology, finances wars, creates growth. Every major empire in history used debt to rise, but the ones that lost control of it fell. So the question isn't just who does the world owe? The real question is, can the system keep expanding forever? Or will there come a moment when growth slows, confidence shakes, and the cycle changes? Because the past has shown us something important. Money builds nations. Debt shapes empires. But trust is what holds the entire system together. And right now, the global economy runs on that trust. The trust that debts will be honored. The trust that currencies will survive. The trust that tomorrow's economy will be bigger than today's. If that trust holds, the system continues. If it breaks, history tells a very different story. So next time you hear that the world is drowning in debt, remember this: the global financial system isn't just about money. It's about belief, power, and the fragile balance holding everything together. Because the past doesn't just tell us what happened, it explains what could happen next. Welcome to The Economic Historian, where money, power, and history are always connected. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more stories about economic history, global power, and the forces shaping our future. because the next financial shift won't start in the future. It's already beginning.